All right, what's up, everyone? I'm Femi, and I am still wanting some grubs, but could also go for a nice jungle vacation right now.
I'm Josh, and I am doing my best to live that Hakuna Matata vibe.
Now we're discussing the audience and rethink elements of our subject film, The Lion King. This is the A and the R in our SMART outline. You can listen to the first episode of the trio or the last one for the SM and the T. So the audience of The Lion King. Josh, who do we suggest watch The Lion King?
65 plus. That's the audience. All the oldies.
It's an old one for the
old
boomers.
one for the boomers. This is a boomer movie all the way. No, man. This is for the whole fam. This is for the millennials, the group, whatever before the millennials. I think Gen X, Gen Z, Gen XYZ.
I have such a hot take on, and we can do another video essay, but I have such a hot take on this generational stuff. But
so that I would say it's for everybody. And actually, I want to call out too that, you know, like when you and I are talking about like audience and who this is for. So obviously, when we've had episodes about like Fight Club, we're not going to be like, yeah, watch it with your 10-year-old. Like, you know,
right.
There's a reason we're doing that. But for something like Lion King, it might be kind of silly that we're having this discussion about who the audience is. What is the purpose of kind of like picking or applying these brackets to a movie like Lion King for families with kids, friends, and just evangelistically to maybe get people talking about deep stuff?
I think the goal of looking at the audience is trying to understand who is the art probably made for, and two, what is the art helpful for in that grouping. It's really important for us that, even though we're not going to be legalistic about it through the course of this, that we're not going to tell people what they can or can't watch, but we can say these are where we think it's a healthier conversation coming afterwards, after consuming it, than unhealthy. So for Fight Club, for instance, we would say you're not going to have a healthy conversation with a 10-year-old likely after watching Fight Club. Mm-hmm. You might be a philosophical anomaly in your household. That's for your discernment. But for as much as we can say for general public, that's sort of why we break down the audience in the way that we do. It's not a judgment or a prescription, but just what we think after we watch it. It'll be like, oh, this would be a really good conversation to have with these people. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons we do that.
Yeah. And so I'll chime in on a couple of them given our last chunk that we just recorded about messages and stuff, which is, we're talking about like parenting and things like that. So even though this is a kid's movie, classic, like old school Disney, there's so many different areas and brackets where people get value from. And so if you're a little kid, like obviously you're not going to really maybe pick up on the parenting messages or the ideas of mercy. But if you're a parent, like those are going to be things that you might latch onto and be able to kind of pull out and use for some of those discussions. But your kids might lean more focus into the like, wow, the world is very pressuring and I am constantly wanting to just Hakuna Matata with my buddies on Fortnite, and like that becomes the thing that they get to talk about. And then, that's kind of where the depth of the audience becomes valuable to the movie. But from your perspective, like, do you think there's a certain way that, like, is this a good, like, family night movie? Like, which would you say is the best? I don't know if that's a good question, but I'll ask it anyway. Of the three, which is the best group that this movie applies to?
I think it's a really good family night movie. Close second would be, like, a nostalgic movie with other people who are, in their late 20s, early 30s. Just because it's, and probably mid 30s now because I'm checking my own age. But the idea of what are you going to talk about after the movie? It's really helpful for little kids to see after there's a lot of fighting and some scary stuff to be calmed down by their parents and see what's going on. And then for friends that you're just watching this back, it's cool to now that you have a bunch of different skills in thinking and analysis to go back and go, man, we just had a really nice, throwback movie night. Let's, crack open a bottle of, something that you allow in your household, or some drinks that you allow in your household, and have some popcorn and like just chat, and get a time to talk that we normally wouldn't have, over this film. So that'd probably be my 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think making a case for the evangelistic side, I think because Lion King is such kind of a cultural touchstone. I think this is
Mhm.
one of those movies where like you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's like, ew, Lion King, no way, I'm not watching
Right.
that with you. Like that's a movie for babies.
Mhm.
So yeah, so when we're thinking of audience, we just want to encourage you, like, you know, this is one of the reasons for this section is to like get us thinking about, you know, who do these themes and the message, like who does that apply to? And then how can we leverage that for discussion? So speaking of discussion, let's jump into our rethink. Are you cool with that?
Let's
Otherwise,
do it.
any last thoughts? All right, let's do it. So one of our first questions we had was, how would we describe the key things that helped Simba find his identity? And then how can that maybe apply to us as the viewer?
So this is a little bit old school, but if your name is like Tyler or Taylor, that's usually a last name coming from a profession. So if your last name was Tyler, your family tiled. If it was Taylor, Taylor. And for Simba, part of the luck of being born into royalty is that some of his identity is you're a prince, dude. Like, this is what you got to do. These are some of the roles of a prince. So that helped him understand some of it. The other things were like in him expecting to be a king one day, what he would want to see in a king and what he would want people to think about him as a king. And so he pursued those things. And his identity was very future focused on the role. I think that as time went on, he realized his friendships with Nala, Timon and Pumbaa, Nala coming back, Rafiki and his father helped him understand, oh, I am much more of a complex person than the simple narratives that I've developed for myself. I am not future king, then guilty, then trying to relax. I am not these simple things. I'm this much more complex individual. And those helped him impair it back to him the truth about all of these multifaceted nuances of himself, and hopefully goes into him having multifaceted nuances in the way that he views other people. But those are some of the key things that impacted him finding his identity, his parents' office, family job, his father, his friends, his journey. And then unfortunately, and this is probably key, lies that he is told about himself also played a role into him understanding and believing different elements about his identity.
Yeah.
But that's what I would say for them. You?
Yeah, well, I had a follow-up question. I got to figure out how to ask it clearly. But what I'm processing is I feel like we have these big experiences, right, in our life, and that those experiences get kind of turned into like data, we'll call it, just to keep it kind of really straightforward. And so if one of those experiences is my parents when I'm 5 yelling at me for, you know, doing something destructive, and it somehow gets interpreted in my mind that they say you are bad, like you did a bad thing, and my brain goes, you're bad, you're a bad person, and I go, uh-oh, I'm a bad person, right? Like that gets absorbed. That might not necessarily be what I was supposed to take away or I heard.
Yeah.
And then you kind of hit on that with like the lies that we get told about ourselves. How would you maybe like walk through, either from your own life, even as like, you know, being a dad of young kids, how are you navigating, or like what are you seeing in that pattern of like, okay, this is them, this might be their weakness and their like story of like how they're gonna have to grow, where, oh, I said this, but they took it this way, and like that's how they're gonna like maybe absorb it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's that kind of, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty heavy awareness to have like every moment when you're parenting, but
yeah, this is a big thing for me. You don't get to know somebody else's identity. You cannot call somebody out for their identity. I think that that's something we do very quickly. Like we'll say somebody is evil. And honestly, if we're just taking 2 more seconds to think about it, all the things we've done as mistakes, we had a good reason for doing it. It might have just not been the best prioritized reason. So like a really good simple one would be a little kid holding a cup with one hand when you ask them to hold a cup with 2 hands. They're like, well, I can hold it with one hand. I'm showing you that I'm a bigger kid. I can hold it with one hand. I know I can do it. And the parent is thinking, yeah, but you could make a mistake because you don't have skill with one hand. You don't have strength with one hand. And if you drop it, you're not the one who's going to have to clean it up. So please listen to me, hold it with two hands. The kid's not being dumb. The kid's not being evil. The kid's not trying to even be disobedient. Those are all things that are happening concurrently with a thought of, I want to demonstrate to these people that I have this skill now. Do they not remember? Do they not know that I have this skill now? That is the challenge as adults to adults. There are a lot of people who wonder why women who are in really tough situations stay with bad partners. The calculus that they're doing is just different from yours on the outside. And so for me, it's really important to talk with my kids and say the thing that they did compared to who they are, and separate it every single time as much as I can. Because I don't want them to think anybody can call out their identity, or that the math that they're doing is wrong, but explain to them a different way to view the math on what they're doing. Hey, please hold it with two hands. Okay, now you're disobeying. I told you to hold it with two hands. I told you to hold your plate with two hands. It's heavy, right? You don't want to be disobedient, but I never call out the identity. And the way that I see adults make a huge mistake with this is they will say a person did something on purpose, or a person did something that impacted them on purpose, or was neglectful on purpose, when they just had a different priority. I know that I don't agree with the current administration on so many things in the United States. Their calculus is just different. And from their calculus, I see how what they're doing makes sense to them. I just disagree with the calculus and the importance of what they want compared to the things that I think are important. But I can't call them stupid, and I can't call them idiotic, and I can't call them evil. I can say the impacts of what they're doing and the decisions they're making are ill-advised, wrong, misprioritized. But if I call out somebody's identity, I'm allowing other people to call out my identity. And they don't know it. They can just tell me what they like about me and what they don't like about me. Mm-hmm. Like that's really important. And I think a lot of times kids, their bad behavior is called out as a part of their identity instead of as an action that has consequences that they don't like. I could go on that for a long time, but it happens a lot when, especially if people have parental trauma, they'll talk about their parents in a really negative way. And I'll be like, I don't think you can talk about your parents like that. They might have made mistakes for sure, but you don't know their identity because you don't know their entire story. They were probably doing a different math, either fearful for your financial future or your emotional future or something that you just didn't calculate. And it hurt you when they disagreed with you and pushed you in a different way. But that doesn't mean that's their identity, you know?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Another hot take episode.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I think like at the core of what you're saying, which I agree with, and I think is important for us as individuals and viewers of this movie to process, especially in light of scripture, is like there are a lot of things that are going to challenge our identity. And I feel like there's a big difference between absorbing what anybody says and then having like a trusted circle that can speak to you, if that makes sense. Like I know for me, that has been something that has been really challenging, especially, when we were doing PA in the early days. One of my biggest anxieties used to be like, okay, I watch all these other people online and them doing stuff, and like, what if I say something stupid because it's 8 a.m. and I don't know how to think and talk clearly at 8 a.m, and then someone's like, I'm gonna ruin your life because you said something dumb at 8 a.m, and then they take that as all of who I am, and like that was a really big fear and anxiety. And I think for me, something that really helped was remembering that there are people around me, and because I do not just live my entire life through my work and online and what I absorb. Like I have people around me where I can go to them, and if I'm really doing something that's messed up or not okay, like they're going to tell me and they're going to hold me accountable. And I need to listen to those folks because they're seeing more of the picture than, some random guy on the internet who's like, duh, you're stupid, and like being able to let that go. But like, I'm thinking of my high schoolers right now. From your experience, what's one piece of advice in our modern age and with everything going on, that you would tell them how to protect their identity? Because we see with Simba, he was at a fragile young stage when Scar lied to him about basically being like his dad's killer, and how that just wrecked him. Simba was kind of young to maybe have a defense mechanism at that point to protect and be like, no, I didn't do that. Like, and to stand confidently. Like, what would be your tip for younger audiences?
I'd say that, and this is sort of how God asks us to develop our identity, is to remember that you are his creation and you're a child of God, especially in Christ first.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that impact the decisions you're about to make and what people tell you? Period. So if Simba thought he wasn't brave enough to go to an elephant graveyard, right? Like, oh, people aren't going to believe that I'm brave enough. It's like, whoa, hold on. I am the prince. It doesn't matter if people think I'm brave enough or not. I am the prince.
Mm-hmm.
That is who I am. For high school students, it's really hard to believe, like, I am the child of my parents. They take me to school, they feed me, they clothe me, they do all these things. They make mistakes too, but that is who I am and who I am from. Oh, all of these teachers are spending their time day after day after day. Here, those are irrefutable. People might not like some things that I do, and I can make some decisions there, but those do not define me, right? So going to the base of your identity is the biggest thing. Protecting your identity is you defining the things that you like about yourself as core to who you are, and then saying nobody can speak into those or call out those things as not true. And the issue with that is that it gives you the realm to nebulously continue to redefine what that is as you get older and older. Because a 22-year-old artist compared to a 47-year-old artist compared to a 63-year-old artist are different, even in the person who thinks they're an artist's mind. A 22-year-old basketball player, 43-year-old basketball player, 67-year-old basketball player, different, right? So you can call out your identity and say, I'm protecting this identity as much as I want. Like, but if I say I am a child of God who likes basketball, then it's really easy for me to play at every age. It's really easy for me to like not think of me not playing as changing the fact that I'm a child of God who likes basketball. It's not a threat to me. Feeling like our identity is threatened is the biggest reason we'll make some decisions that really have some negative impacts on our life. Oh man, I'm trying to be caring as I'm calling it out, right? Of other people who are going to be listening to this, and I want to be really, really careful.
It's all good.
I'm not scared of it, but hear me very carefully and with as much kindness and grace as possible. The foundation of your identity is you are a human being, and human beings have a purpose. And that purpose a lot of the time is to figure out how to solve problems for other people and care for them. We've added all the drama about, relationships and gender and financial systems and winning and losing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like a core fundamental thing. And if you do that to your death, like that is a huge nobility. You're just not going to be famous probably. And that's okay. But if you really want to be celebrated, really question why you're being celebrated. Is it because you are what people are telling you? You are great? Or because you doing what people expect you to do makes them feel great? Just be really careful with that. Like your identity is not defined by you as a person. You are a type of creature for a thing. If you don't believe that, you can disagree with me all you want, because that's just different worldviews, and I get it. Protect your identity as much as you want, and like I hope that's successful for you, and you reap all the rewards of that, and none of the negative. But that's a lot harder to do because there are a couple billion other people who are threats to that identity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, kind of transitioning from that, because I think that connects to our second question of actually going through the process of maybe we've spent time building our identity on a unhealthy foundation. So you said, if we're, you and I coming from a Christian worldview, our baseline is imago Dei. I'm made in the image of God. I'm a child of God. Anything else is bonus that I get to add on to that, but it doesn't change that core foundation. But for a lot of us, it might have been that something got put at that foundation that needs to get kind of broken up, rechanged, whatever. Redefined is the word we use in this next question. So how do you think Simba's identity redefinition allowed him to actually be able to step up into responsibility instead of maybe getting stuck with Timon and Pumbaa in kind of a, let's just chill and have a good time?
Yeah, I think that Simba sort of reaccepted his role as a prince, and he had abandoned that and said, hey, I'm an individual and I want to do the things that I want to do and relax with my friends all day in as comfortable as an area as I can with very low order. Him going, no, I am a prince and there's a hierarchy and things are going wrong, made him feel responsible. Like, I'm responsible for fulfilling the things that I was born into. I don't have to do it the exact same way, but I need to step back in, and that has a cost to it. But the responsibility makes you realize, oh, I'm willing to take on the cost, versus having the redefinition of I'm a prince, but I don't want to, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of the things that's running through my mind right now is just how messy, because I mean, like, the whole identity concept is like huge to me. And actually, I mean, no, now's the time. So I've battled with different mental health diagnoses my entire life. When I was in college, I went to one psychiatrist. She was like, oh, you have bipolar. And I was like, really? Like, after one meeting, she was like, oh yeah, this is the evidence. Bam, this is you. And so that process for me was basically like her having a giant stamp and just being like, all right, this is you now. And so then what do I do? I start researching all the things that go with that disorder, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me now. Like, I have this, and I'm going to do this, and this is going to be who. And so all of a sudden now all my choices became redefined and changed.
Yeah.
Then actually just a couple years ago, after moving to Milwaukee from Madison, I got a new stamp. Dude was like, all right, we got to erase this OCD one, or this bipolar one. It's OCD now. Like, now there's a new stamp. And now I'm going through another phase of recontextualizing all my choices and my thoughts, and just being like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on? Like, who am I? And all that stuff. And yes, at the baseline, I know that I'm a child of God, but there's all this other torrential storm stuff going on the top, where I'm like, yeah, but like, how do I see all these other things I'm doing clearly? But recently, actually, like, as of like a week, this week, I found out that the thing I've been dealing with this whole time is ADHD, which, for people listening to this podcast, maybe you're going to be like, oh, that's why Josh like talks in circles and like does make sense sometimes. But what has been helpful for that is, now that doesn't define me, but it helps me, having gone through a more substantial process to do that. It helps me understand how God has wired me, how my brain works. And now I feel like I'm now kind of going into like a Simba phase, where I was kind of in the wilderness of like, what's going on up there? Like, what's going on in my brain? And like, it doesn't define me and it's not my identity, but it was hard to not see every single thing I did outside of that. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, I have this clear label, and I can like add that as something that maybe impacts how I live, but it's not me. It's not who I am. It's not what defines Josh. Like, I am not, human that has this thing. And so I think, honestly, it's helped me. I've even seen in the last week, it helped me actually step more into the things that I've had as responsibilities or whatever, because now I know when my brain or my body pushes back against certain things, I'm like, oh, well, this is just because you, like, someone with what you got does this when they have responsibilities. So like, chill, dude, take a breather, go do this, then go do that thing. Versus what used to be the inner monologue with the unhealthy identity is like you're dysfunctional and you're not right. Like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like you are broken. And that's a really hard thing to live with when you're like watching other people around you do things effortlessly versus
seemingly effortlessly.
It's like, oh my gosh. Seemingly effortlessly. Yeah,
I think
for sure. So
a really good, and this is just for if you're an audience member who does not have any like strong feeling of any type of mental health, just think about it when you're sick, because this is something that happens for me, being sick right now. It challenges who I think of myself because I just am not able to do some things. I can't do what I normally would want to be able to do, and it challenges my identity. And so I find myself getting more frustrated and having a shorter temper and getting more annoyed because I'm sick. I didn't make myself sick on purpose. I try to eat fairly healthy. Like, I didn't make myself sick on purpose. I didn't try to do the thing on purpose, but now it's defining what I'm able to do, and it frustrates me. And I think people who have any type of mental health or emotional health struggle, it's hard because one, people can't see it, but two, the disconnect between what you're doing versus what you want to be able to do. And just, again, knowing the identity of I'm a person who's dealing with being sick. I'm a person who's dealing with this way that my brain works versus I'm the way my brain works. And that's it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You're not. You're a person first. So, yeah.
So going into our third question from that, what do you see God highlighting in scripture as key to developing our identity? Because I think when being real, I've hated when people have said that as an answer where they're like, well, if you're struggling with our identity, like your identity's in God. And I'm like, yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What do I do with that? And I think it's a beautiful statement when you really like sit and think about it, but it's not, the statement itself is not the weight that cracks the shell, I feel like, of our self-perception. It's like the stuff that goes with it. It's that God, an infinite being, created me and loves me even though I've got strengths and weaknesses and passions that will change. And like, that's kind of the weight of the statement.
Yeah, it's really more about him than it is about you. To say that you're a child of God or a child of the King has much less to do with you and way more to do with who he is. If he is stable and comforting and loving and just and pure, to be his child is really, really stabilizing. If he is tumultuous and nebulous because you don't know him that well, then it's just like being, like an actual adoption. Like it's like, well, I don't know who you are really still. I'm still trying to figure you out. I don't get you. My kids can be disciplined by me and then like 5 minutes later come and give me a hug because they've been around me since they were born and they know me. People who don't know me just see a 6'1", like 310-pound black guy and they don't know who I am. Like, and they're trying to assess. And so I think that God is saying, if you know me and then you are mine, you will feel safer than if you don't know me and are trying to figure out how you are mine. If you're trying to figure out like how to make me happy, like I'm some divine judge sitting on a throne waiting for you to make me happy, you're gonna feel much more insecure than if you see me like you would see your own child or your own pet or your own like kitschy little thing that you take care of. With that, it's so much more helpful to see, oh, he is the king and I'm safe in him. And if somebody tries to attack me, I'm safe in him. A quick aside to that is my name is Olufemi Olusasan Olukade Olugemiga Oluwatobiloba Oluwagbemini Shokoya, which is not very normal for Tennessee. But when I learned what my name meant, like God loves me, God repays, God brings joy, God has lifted me higher, my God is greater than kings, God has given me honor. And like to resist suffering. Like it didn't matter what any kid wanted to make fun of my name. I knew what my name meant. Like step off, like try to make fun of me now. When I know what my parents and grandparents spoke over me, like get back, right? But if you don't know that about God and what he says about you, when people say, well, just look into your identity in God, like, you're just going to be like, what does that mean? Like, but when you trust him and you're like, oh, okay, I get him now better. I understand who he is now. And now to be his child is more comforting. I know that even in pain, in all these other things, he's going to be good, that it's more stabilizing.
Yeah, for sure. So I have one more just kind of like sub part to that question to connect it back to our movie.
Yeah.
So we have a couple moments in the film where Simba has other people defining his identity for him in a negative way, right? And some intentional, like Scar, some unintentional, like Timon and Pumbaa. You know, Scar, you're a killer. You killed your dad. You're irresponsible. Timon and Pumbaa, like, you're just a chill guy. Like, you're just, you're just here to have
relax
fun.
With
like,
us. Don't eat us.
Just relax. Yeah, it's fine. But on the flip side, we have someone like Nala who's like, no, but you're this though, and who kind of like calls out that stuff. Yeah. And I think that can be a tension in our world of like, when and how do we allow outside voices to speak into our identity, and how do we discern who's worth listening to and who do we just be like, nah, like, I get it, like, you see some things, but also like, you don't know me, and I'm allowed to say you don't know me. And kind of like you were saying with your name, like, I think that's kind of a step in the right direction of a great example of like, yeah, like, I have a long name that isn't, John Smith, but like, sorry, like, whatever.
Yeah. And I think that whoever is closer, if we look at that trajectory, Timon and Pumbaa appeal to his kid, like, you're chill, like, chill. Nala appeals to, you're also like, you have this role. But Rafiki has the line. He says, yo, Mufasa's boy. And that gives Simba the like, oh yeah. And so who speaks to us and who you listen to are the people who are closer to the truth. The closest to the truth are people who say, you are a child of God. You are a child of the one true living God. People who are like, well, you're a really good voice artist, or you're a really good cook, or you're a really good interior designer. Like, those are all great, but they're further away from the truth that we want to stabilize on. So people who are in our church, especially the old people who sometimes get on your nerves because they say things that are like really cliche, who see you as a child of God and treat you that way, those are things. That would be the other piece too. And I know we're getting along, but the idea of people who say you're something and then treat you as that thing. Because if someone says you're a really great interior designer, but every time they need interior design help, don't ask you, like, okay, so how great do you think I am?
Message received.
But somebody who says, hey, you're a child of God, you're a child of the one true living God, and then treats you with all the weight of that, of like, you're making your father unhappy, you are making your father really happy, like, that person you can trust. And if they see you just shopping on Amazon all the time and not really helping people in the body, and they want to call you out on it, if they call you a child of God, you can trust them a little bit more than the person who's like, oh my gosh, you're an amazing blah, 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 who never really has an opportunity to call that up in you,
You're an amazing shopper.
Right. You're a great shopper. Oh my gosh. Such a great shopper. Can I shop for you? No. Like, so just those are things about how God says our identity, which is why church is so important. Scripture is so important. And knowing him is so important because he is the stabilizing factor in both of those things.
Yeah. Love it. All right. That has been our audience and rethink. So we're going to close this one out and we'll catch you in the theology section.